Let's get into the answers for this Unit 4 Lesson 2 activity. So the top section has to do with what quadrants different trig values are positive and negative. And I hope you remember that if you look at all the quadrants, this is the first quadrant, this is the second quadrant, this is the third quadrant, this is the fourth quadrant. And in the first quadrant, all of them are positive. In the second quadrant, sine is positive, but cosine and tangent are negative. In the third quadrant, tangent is positive, and sine and cosine are negative. And in the fourth quadrant, cosine is positive, and sine and tangent are negative. But also the related ones, the reciprocals of each of these, is also positive in the same quadrant. So everything's positive in quadrant 1. Quadrant 2, cosecant will also be positive. And quadrant 3, cotangent will also be positive. And in quadrant 4, secant will also be positive. So this will help us fill in the rest of this. If I didn't say it explicitly, it's negative. So in number 1, which trig functions are positive for angles terminating in quadrant 4? All right, you can look just above that and see that our answers for that are going to be cosine and secant. Wow, that zoomed right in. Which trig functions are negative for angles terminating in quadrant 2? All right, so what ones are negative? Well, not sine and cosecant, but all the other ones. So cosine, secant, tangent, and cotangent. Perfect. If the cosine of theta is less than 0, which quadrants could the terminal side of theta lie? So if cosine is negative, which quadrants could the terminal side of theta lie? Well, not the first one and not the fourth one because they're positive there. So it's negative in quadrant 2 and quadrant 3. If cosecant of theta is greater than 0, what quadrant could the terminal side of theta lie? Well, everything is positive in quadrant 1, and cosecant is also positive in quadrant 2. Great. If tangent theta is less than 0 and secant theta is greater than 0, which quadrants could the terminal side of theta lie? So where is tangent negative and secant positive? So secant is positive in the fourth quadrant, and in that quadrant, tangent is also negative. Secant is positive in the first quadrant, but tangent is also positive in that one. So the only answer that this one could be is 4. And if the sine is negative and the cosine is negative and the cotangent is negative, what quadrant could this terminal side be? Well, whereas sine is negative in 3 and 4, and cotangent's negative in 4. So once again, our answer will be 4, quadrant 4. And I honestly have no idea why they always use Roman numerals for quadrants, but that's the only thing I use Roman numerals for. So whenever I see them, I always think it's a quadrant. That's cool. All right. The next part says find the exact value of the trigonometric function. And as we do this, the first thing I'm going to do is write the coordinates for each of the angles. So 60 degrees on my unit circle has the coordinates of 1/2 square root of 3 over 2. And also remember the x value is the cosine and the y value is the sine. And then the tangent is the sine over the cosine, or y over x. So if we're trying to find the sine of 60, that is really simply the square root of 3 over 2. They get harder. Cosine of 225 degrees. Well, 225 degrees has the coordinates negative square root of 2 over 2, negative square root of 2 over 2. So that one's in the third quadrant, and it's great. It's one of the 45-degree angle reference angles. That's why they're the same. So what is the cosine? It's the x value, negative square root of 2 over 2. That also happens to be the value of the sine as well. The tangent of 330 degrees. 330 degrees has the coordinates square root of 3 over 2, negative 1/2. And the tangent is y over x. So it will be negative 1/2 over square root of 3 over 2. And I hope we've done enough of these to know that the denominators, since they're the same, will cancel out. We're left with negative 1 over square root of 3, which rationalize the denominator will be a negative square root of 3 over 3. And that's what the tangent is. Moving on to number 4. The cotangent of 150. So 150 has the coordinate negative square root of 3 over 2, comma 1/2. And the cotangent is x over y. The tangent is y over x. The cotangent is x over y. So I can write the x negative square root of 3 over 2 over the y 1/2. And by simplifying this, you'll get negative square root of 3. The secant of 135. Now, secant is the reciprocal of cosine. So the secant of any angle is 1 over the x-coordinate, because it's the reciprocal of cosine, and cosine is the x-coordinate. What are the coordinates of 135 degrees? Negative square root of 2 over 2, comma, square root of 2 over 2. Not bad. Okay, so the x value is negative square root of 2 over 2, so it's going to be 1 over the negative square root of 2 over 2, which will in turn just take the reciprocal of that. 2 over negative square root of 2. Now I have to rationalize this. It becomes 2 times the square root of 2 over negative 2, or, sorry, I'm going to go into the next one. That reduces to just negative square root of 2. And that's what that cosine is. That's what that secant is, sorry. So I'll write it again inside so you can see negative square root of 2. Oh, tangent. We might need the room for tangent. 210 degrees as the coordinate of negative square root of 3 over 2, and then negative 1/2. Now, we're in the third quadrant, so tangent's actually going to be positive here. Negative divided by negative is positive, and the 1/2 will go on top. So 1/2 over square root of 3 over 2. Now we can put the negatives in, but I would just immediately cancel them out. This reduces to, the 2's will drop out once we multiply by the reciprocal. We'll end up with 1 over the square root of 3, which we know is square root of 3 over 3 once you rationalize it. And once again, it's 210 in the third quadrant. I know that tangent's going to be positive. secant 270 degrees. 270 degrees, that is on one of our axes. That's the negative y-axis. So it has a coordinate of simply 0, -1. And secant is the reciprocal of cosine. So secant of any angle theta is 1 over the x value. And our x value is 0, so it will be 1 over 0, which is undefined. Can't have a fraction with 0 in the denominator. All right, cosecant of 315. Cosecant is 1 over the sine. So CSC of theta would be 1 over y. And 315 degrees has a reference angle of 45 degrees, so it's going to be square root of 2 over 2, negative square root of 2 over 2. Okay, 1 over the y value, so it will be essentially the reciprocal of our y value. So 2 over negative square root of 2. We feel like we just did this one. 2 times the square root of 2 over -2, and that just leads to negative square root of 2. I fit it in this time though. That's nice. Sine of 240. 240 is in the third quadrant. It's going to be negative. The coordinates are -1/2 and negative square root of 3 over 2. And sine is the y value. So this one is simply negative square root of 3 over 2. We don't have to do much figuring on that one. When it's sine and cosine, it's whatever you see. We'll zoom out there unnecessarily. Oh, now we're going into radian measure. So 7 pi over 6. And just so you have some sort of an idea, this is 210 degrees. But we're going to do everything in radians for this. Actually, as long as we know where it is and we know what the coordinate is, which is negative square root of 3 over 2, -1 over 2. Tangent is going to be y over x, so -1/2 over negative square root of 3 over 2. Since both 2's are in the denominators, they will eventually cancel out. Negative divided by negative is a positive. It's in the third quadrant. We knew tangent would be positive. It's 1 over the square root of 3, which is square root of 3 over 3. Cosine of 3 pi over 4. This is 135 degrees. If you need the reference, that's the second quadrant. Cosine is going to be negative there. The coordinates at 3 pi over 4 is negative square root of 2 over 2, square root of 2 over 2. It's on has a reference angle of 45 degrees. That's why they're the same. And the cosine is just the x value. It's going to be negative square root of 2 over 2. There's two places on the graph where the cosine is negative square root of 2 over 2. And that's 135. And again at 225 or 5 pi over 4. And then there's two places where it's positive, 315 and 45. Okay, cosecant. So now we're talking about 1 over the sine, which is the y value. So what is the coordinate at 5 pi over 3? That's 300 degrees. And the coordinate is 1/2 negative square root of 3 over 2. Apparently I wanted all the negative answers possible. All right, sine is negative in the fourth quadrant. That's where we're at here. And it's going to be 1 over that. So 1 over the square root of 3, negative square root of 3 over 2 is the reciprocal. So that's going to be 2 over negative square root of 3. And I'm going to make the denominator rational. It will be 2 times the square root of 3 over 3. And that negative sticks around, but I'm just going to move it in front. You can move it in the top, the bottom, or in front. People typically don't like it in the bottom, but in front or in the numerator is totally fine. There we go with that one. Moving over to number 13, the sine of pi over 6. Oh, this is in the first quadrant. This is going to be very great. Pi over 6 is 30 degrees if you had to convert it, and the coordinate is square root of 3 over 2 and 1/2. So the sine of that is just the y value. It's 1/2. It's my favorite one so far. All right, here we go. Back at it. Cotangent. 5 pi over 6, which, if you didn't know, is 150 degrees. And the coordinate at that point, at 5 pi over 6, is negative square root of 3 over 2, 1/2. Excellent. Now, cotangent is x over y. Tangent's y over x. Cotangent is x over y. That will actually make this a little bit easier of a problem. 1/2. Since both of our denominators are 2, they will cancel out, and we're just left with negative square root of 3. Finally, one we didn't have to rationalize. The next one is not one of those. Secant, that's 1 over the cosine, so 1 over y, and 11 pi over 6, which is 330 degrees if you need to convert it, but we don't need to. 11 pi over 6 is on my unit circle. The coordinate is square root of 3 over 2, negative 1/2. Has a 30-degree reference angle. So 1 over the y will be 1 over the square root of 3 over 2. And that will make the square root of 3 over 2 its reciprocal. 2 over the square root of 3. Now we have to rationalize this. So we end up with 2 times the square root of 3 over 3. And secant is cosine, and it's in the fourth quadrant, so it's positive, which is great. That was the final problem on this exercise. I hope you could follow along and you feel comfortable about this. Good luck on your test.